Good morning, and how are we going this morning? It's been horribly cold up here in Bundaberg. I'm actually wearing a jacket this morning, which I normally don't do. I normally walk around in a t-shirt and shorts, but anyhow, I've got a jacket on because it's a bit cold. We're going to look at Genesis chapter 3 this morning. I hope you've been enjoying what we've been doing, but let's go in Genesis chapter 3. We could say this is one of the key chapters in Scriptures: the fall of mankind, the deception of Eve, and the sin of Adam. In this chapter, we see the spiritual death of mankind. We're given a hint of the plan of the redemption of mankind through Jesus Christ, but we're not really told much about it at all. But the hint is there, and we're given a hint of his atoning death for mankind on the cross of Calvary. But I don't want to look specifically at this. Father in his wisdom has been speaking to me about the unseen consequences of our actions. Sometimes we do things and we don't fully understand what the outcome of that is, and that's what we're going to look at the moment. So I'd like to stop for a moment, if possible, look at the motivation behind the actions of Adam, Eve, and Satan. Satan was about trying to become God, and in this have mankind serve him. He wanted to get God off the throne and take God's place. He rebelled. He was come out of heaven. He was no longer worshipping God and no longer obeying him. He saw mankind as the apple of God's eye, and he thought, I'll get them to follow me. They follow me, they won't follow God, and I'll have turned God's plans upside down. Then Satan, through deception, convinced Eve to eat of the forbidden fruit. He'd subtly had her give the fruit to Adam to eat, and yes, Adam did. So first of all, he got her to eat it, and then he got her to give it to Adam, and Adam did. You think when you've achieved something, you think you've won, and Satan thought he'd won. But little did he know that the ultimate consequences of his actions would be his death. And in verse 15, God spells this out. Did you know this before? God did, but Satan didn't. And you can judge this yourself. Adam and Eve, what was their motivation for eating the fruit? I don't think it was disobedience. I think it was they wanted to be like God and know God and be and know good and evil. There was this carrot out there that they would know something that God knew that they didn't know. And they wanted to know that. They wanted to be like God. Strangely, at this time, they had no concept of what evil was. But it sounded good just to be like God, who they walked with daily in the Garden of Eden. They saw God's power, they knew who God was, and they wanted to be more like him. The consequences of their actions were enormous. They had a broken relationship with God. We see that in verse 8. They were banished from their home. We see that in verse 24. And that hard work in producing fruit, verse 19. And then physical death, verse 19. Eve had pain in childbirth, and then spiritual death. Okay, broken relationship with God. God came walking in the cool of the garden, the cool of the afternoon, and they went and hid from him. They couldn't stand in God's presence. And then after that, God banished them from the Garden of Eden and put the two seraphim at the door, and they couldn't get in. And then God said to Adam, "You're going to eat by the sweat of your brow." And the thorns and briars were produced, and he had to pull those out before he could eat. In the past, he'd just reach up and grab an apple and pull it down and eat it, but now he had to work to do it. And God said, "Dust to dust, ashes to ashes." He was going back to dust. And Adam and Eve, we know, ladies know all about the pain of childbirth. My wife's had 5 of them, so I know what that's about. I don't want to go through it, I assure you of that. So the desire of Adam and Eve to be like Yahweh and sinning against him had enormous consequences in them and their future children. We suffer the consequences of what Adam and Eve did. They saw what was good in their eyes, but could not or would not think of the consequences of their actions upon themselves and their children. But more than this, we see their ripple effects and the consequences of their sin upon creation. Yep, upon creation. Verse 17, God cursed the ground because of you. God cursed the ground that they stood on. Maybe we don't fully understand this, but the world we live in is cursed because of the sin of mankind. In Romans 8:18 to 19, Paul talks about this curse. He also says the world is groaning for redemption of mankind so it can be released from this curse. The consequences of the actions of Adam and Eve created a huge impact upon the world we live in. As it is shown here, for every decision we make, there's consequences, not for our lives, but the lives of others. In our actions, our sin or disobedience to the will of God and the consequences of our disobedience will be devastating to others. Not only us, but others. When we do things wrong, it has consequences upon us and others. Just something to think about and contemplate. Have you ever considered what the consequences of your sin or your actions are upon yourself, upon your immediate family, upon your community, upon your work, upon your church? You know, maybe there's something you need to speak to Jesus about, something that's there that you haven't dealt with that you need to go and talk to him about. But that's something between you and God, not something I want to know about, but something that between you and God, some sin that's in the past that you're bearing consequences now. Or maybe there's someone else you need to go and talk about and get that action right. Sin will have its entrails or its things hanging around until we actually ask forgiveness from, then God will take the sin away. But sometimes the consequences of the sin will remain regardless of what we say. So just hang in there and think about what we've said. Have a wonderful day, and we'll catch up with you next time. God bless. Thanks. Bye.